What's happening, guys? This is James Blum with MMOHuts.com with just a little bit more on Wildstar. This past weekend I was given the opportunity to party with some of the devs in the newly released Wildstar Adventures, which are one of many unique elements that make up the game, and I figured I'd give you guys a rundown on just what these adventures are.
A new opportunity has presented itself.
So adventures could be thought of as 5-player instances or dungeons, just to give you an idea, but they're really so much more than that actually. The way the game explains adventures is that they're a 5-player simulation created by this guy, the Caretaker, to assess and improve various life forms, kind of like Portal if you will. And so the Caretaker is there to try and figure out what your group is made of and if you can beat his tests. And seeing that they're set up in simulations, it gives the developers a reason to put in extra weird and unusual stuff that you normally wouldn't find in the main game. And I'm also thinking this could potentially be where they add in themed events when the time comes, but that's just my guess.
Do not think that you are impervious to harm simply because this is a simulation.
Now, unlike dungeons, they don't use specially constructed environments like you might typically see with some MMORPGs with, you know, a hallway, then a boss room, then a hallway, then another boss room. You know, very structured. Instead, they take place in huge areas that are essentially modified versions of the open areas you see throughout the rest of the game. And the biggest feature in adventures is that they are highly dependent on player choice and randomness. The developers really focused on that concept, and it's designed to provide players with super replayability, so that playing it the 10th time is just as fun and random as the first time playing it. With all the choices and opportunities for player impact, these are basically choose-your-own-adventure dungeons. So the way they're set up, at the launch of the game there will be 6 different simulations available to players, and they range in different levels starting at 15 and going up to level 45. There are 2 that are faction-specific, and the rest are set up for both Dominion and Exile players. And all of these simulations are themed differently, or have different game mode types rather. For example, one of them called the Siege of Tempest Refuge is sort of a tower defense type situation. The Malgrave Trail is basically like old school Oregon Trail where you have to take care of a caravan that's up against sandstorms, insect swarms, disease, and of course bandits. They even have one where players go up against 5 champion-like AI warriors in a MOBA type simulation called War of the Wild. So there's definitely a lot of variety from the start, and it continues throughout the entire adventure. Every decision you make will determine what happens next in your particular adventure. This creates a huge web of possibilities and outcomes, so in other words, these are dungeons that play out differently every time you run them. And players gain access to these as they reach the various levels required, and when they hit max level, they unlock the veteran mode for the extremely hard challenge. But also nice rewards. Now the demo I was on was the Crest Insurrection. It's one of the entry-level, level 15 adventures, specifically set up for the Exiles. This particular simulation has you team up with the farmers of Crest to support their uprising against the invading Dominion. Now the entry-level adventures are pretty straightforward, and they're the most linear of all of the adventures. Same goes with the Dominion counterpart adventure at level 15. In this, we as a group voted on the scenario that starts off the adventure. See, here we're choosing between the farmer's daughter, where the farmer's home got ransacked and his daughter was kidnapped by the military, and next the science of revenge, where we have to take out a criminal that's been using the local citizens for crazy lab experiments. And finally we have leveling the field, which has us trying to take out the enemy's army supplies. It seems like everyone in my group, including me, wanted to take out the criminal in the science of revenge, so that had us start by taking out snipers in the night. Kind of interesting. Now, of course, for the demo, the already pre-leveled account they gave me was a healer, which is probably the last role I would pick out to play. But to be honest, I found it actually pretty fun trying to keep my team alive the entire time. But starting out here, we had to keep from getting sniped or caught by the spotlights that were actually really difficult to get out of once snagged. And eventually, we find the criminal and kill him, and as a result of completing that mission, we actually clear the area of that type of mob. And the small changes from this will trickle down throughout the rest of the adventure. And so then we vote again, based on 3 choices derived from making our original choice, killing the criminal. And in this one, we had to disguise ourselves as civilians, then break into a prison camp and free the local farmers. In doing so, we get counter-invaded by the Dominion dropping down on jetpacks, and we've got to kill them. Then we take their jetpacks and work together to destroy the Chua war blimp. Starting to sound like an adventure yet? And keep in mind, this stuff can be random and will change depending on what you choose. This also helps so that players can't just figure out the fastest way to complete any of these adventures. And so later on, seeing that we chose scenarios from a fight back or attacking perspective, we start to see changes in the farmers. Now we see these guys here, these freedom fighters that are helping us fight off the enemy. So this change was made based on our actions beforehand, and besides, we just took down the prison camp and the Chua warblimps. It's the least they could do. As you can probably imagine, the situation got a little bit harder as we went on, seeing that the warblimps burned down our safe house and we had to retrieve an important item from the bomb shelter type basement at the remains of the house, and then get out of it before dying to falling rocks and of course enemies. I'd say this adventure was going quite nicely. It seemed about as average as an Indiana Jones movie. And so even later on, after fighting several waves of enemies and losing part of the team by trying to protect the technician trying to disable the remaining warblimps, we finally made our way to the center of town to initiate the civilian rebellion, which was the point from the get-go, and fight alongside them, taking out the final boss, who was fast as hell and threw out mines that blind that are really hard to avoid. And after we took him down, the simulation was complete and we got rewarded based on the choices we made and how well we did. Of course we got the gold, but overall the adventure took about 45 minutes total. The cool part is you get a lot of loot during these adventures, and after you leave you get to take it with you. So just because the adventure is a simulation, it doesn't mean your loot is. And the same thing goes with your experience. You get tons of experience from doing these adventures. In fact, it's probably one way that people will go about leveling the game. The developers feel that players want variety in terms of the flavor of content that they want to experience, so this is an alternative to some of the more traditional dungeons that they already have in the game. However you look at it, just one more way to play Wildstar. They're hoping that players will have a favorite type of adventure that they like to make their own, and I've got to say, it's a really cool concept.
Simulation complete. I suppose next time I shall have to try harder.
But anyway guys, that's about all I have to show you for now. If you're looking for more details on the adventures, check the updated Wildstar profile at MMOHuts.com. Thanks for watching, and until next time guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.
You may now return to the sim core at your leisure.